Hi, so this is part two of a culture of adoring small beginnings, right? So, in the spirit of not despising small beginnings, we do have to make a point of making sure that we're all on the same page. Um, and one of the things about making sure we're all on the same page is that we do need to find common ground because everyone is coming with their subjective um, experiences and frames of reference through which they view the world and which determines how they interact with the world and the people around them, right? So, an example of this type of deliberation process is what one sees in the formation of COSATU. Okay. As much as I might not agree with the tripartite alliance, the Congress alliance between the ANC, COSATU, and the SACP, primarily because I do not in any way agree with what the SACP stands for. And the SACP is the spiritual leader of the Congress alliance. But if you look at how COSATU was formed, okay, in 1982, they started to meet initially to conduct feasibility studies as to whether a national trade union movement was A, desirable, and B, would it be able to do the work of pressuring the South African government to change its policies towards Black people, um, with a particular emphasis on economic inclusion. Okay. So they did these feasibility studies, they came together, they deliberated for, I think it was 2 years of deliberations across the country. Now imagine, like, there was no WhatsApp groups or Skype or anything. They were meeting in person, shop floor, what do you call them? I can't remember the name now, but the organizers, the union organizers in each factory, each whatever workplace locale, would organize people. And obviously now they're doing this like in a very clandestine way as well. Um, they're communicating via written correspondence and all that type of stuff, and coming together. They asking people, what do you want to see, what kind of change do you want to see, whatever, 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 like research. And this is huge. This is a huge undertaking because you're talking about like millions of workers, right? And then um with representatives that they elect. It's a democratic process, like for real. Who then represents each like worker cohort to their national union. So for example, you had like the National Union of Mine Workers, of which current President Ramaphosa was actually the Secretary General, and they led the biggest strike in South Africa in 1985, I believe. For 3 days, they shut down the mining sector. It was just like incredible. For the first time in like 100 years, South Africa wasn't producing gold. Okay. So, this is after the formation of COSATU. Okay. And so it just shows you the power that's available when people organize behind a common vision. Okay. So the trade union movement, COSATU, was extremely instrumental in forcing the National Party to seriously consider reforms in the economy to be inclusive. Okay. Obviously, like I've said before, this whole thing was hijacked by the SACP, with basically using the ANC as its proxy. So just as a side note, don't be fooled when the SACP says that they're going to contest elections on their own. They're not, you know. Essentially, they are trying to put pressure on their proxy to go more towards socialism. But that's like what they say on the surface. The reality is that the SACP leaders just want more of a, a leadership role in the ANC because of the money that's involved. Anyway, so so it's very important that when we are talking about organizing a movement that is going to change the reality of this country, of this world, the reality of our communities, our families, you know, that we obviously know it is desirable. It needs to happen because we can see, mental illness is an epidemic, and we see all the resultant symptoms of it, drug abuse, teenage pregnancy, domestic violence, child abuse, even corruption amongst politicians, criminality, gang warfare, all these things. These are all a symptom of internal turmoil, you know. Um, and even like you can say that, oh, but criminality is a result of economic systems that are inhumane and that force people into criminality as a way of making a living. But even the fact that there are people in positions of power in the economic, political, and social sectors who think it's okay to create systems that are so unjust and unfair, which disenfranchise so many people, those people are mentally ill. They're sick. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that like somehow people in positions of power in political, economic, and social spheres are immune from mental illness. They're not. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, change has to result in the people running the political, economic, and social systems that govern the lives of the people of this country, our communities, the world, have to be occupied by people who share a vision for a more just world, a world based on truth, not on illusion like we have now, based on love, not on ignorance, and selfishness, based on people seeking the best future for the children of this world, not people who are willing to sell the future to fund their instant gratification, as we see. Okay, so, but small beginnings, what does that mean? It means baby steps, right? It means patience. It means failing and trying again and again and again and again. It means each victory is a stepping stone, not a destination. It's a long process and it requires long-term thinking. It requires a determination to build something which will be passed on to future generations, because the work will never be done. Okay, because the work, even when accomplished, like I say, is a stepping stone. But once it's accomplished, the flame of the revolution must be kept burning. Okay. One of the things that happens in revolutions, even if they are successful initially, even if they're successful and they create a society that's lasted like 100 years, if that flame is not kept burning, if that flame is allowed to die, then the revolution will just become a shell and inside it will be rotten. Okay. So it needs to be kept alive. And we're looking at hundreds of years. Okay. But the initial the foundation takes 2 generations to build. That's between 30 and 40 or 50 years. That's the foundation. Okay, because without a culture being established and then transmitted to the next generation, it's not going to be sustained. That's why that's the foundation. But in the foundation, but one doesn't build a foundation without having the entire blueprint of the structure drawn up. Okay, so that's what needs to happen, is the blueprints must be drawn up before implementation starts.